Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Walker today in our conversation around mindfulness and to help aid in addiction recovery. We're really excited that Garrett's going to be presenting on this topic for us. So I'm Brianna Yoakum. I'm the accreditation coordinator and also the assistant of professional development. So I help with webinars like these. And I'll be helping today by monitoring the chat for questions, as well as keeping an eye out for raised hands. And I'm joined here today by Garrett Kostin. So Garrett Kostin is an LICSW as well as an SUDPT, and he has led a number of successful and well-received mindfulness groups in the community around outpatient and inpatient settings since 2015. So Garrett started his social work career with migrant and refugee communities in the Thailand-Myanmar border in 2009. And since returning to the US in 2014, he's gained valuable experience working in both inpatient and outpatient behavioral health and medical settings. He currently serves as a behavioral health consultant, facilitating workshops and trainings on person-centered and trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing skills, as well as medications for opiate use disorder and other topics. He is energized by innovative person-centered initiatives that aim to reduce disparities and inequities in healthcare and society. And Garrett has a couple other trainings coming up, but I'll let him announce those. But yes, welcome, Garrett. Thank you so much for doing this for us. We're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thank you, Brianna.
Yeah.
Just listening to that introduction, I think I've got to edit it down for you, but it is all accurate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I love seeing your faces and names right now, because as soon as I share my screen, it all goes away. But I'm really grateful for you for finding some time to spend with us this morning on this topic that I trust you either already have some personal experience and knowledge about how beneficial it can be for folks in recovery, or you've heard things that have made you interested and want to learn more. And either way, I trust that this is going to be valuable. So let me go ahead and share my screen. As Brianna mentioned, we're going to keep everybody mostly muted. You're welcome to send comments and questions in the chat box, and Brianna will monitor that. And then at the end, I hope that we'll have a good couple minutes for discussion and to discuss some of those questions and answers. So this is Mindfulness Skills for Addiction Recovery. This is the, I believe, fourth webinar I've facilitated for Walker. It's always a pleasure, and I feel like they're getting better and better. so let's take a look at the overview for our hour and a half today. We're gonna start with a brief group activity that I invite you to participate in if you're feeling up to it and willing. It's just a mini mindfulness experience that will get us all feeling relaxed and settled in for this topic. Then we will go into what mindfulness is and what it is not, talk about some of the myths and look at some different definitions of mindfulness. Then getting into the nuts and bolts a little bit more, we'll look at 8 of the foundational components of mindfulness, sort of the attitudes that are useful when we approach mindfulness. We'll talk about the overall benefits that have been found to be the positive outcomes of mindfulness that have been proven in research, not only in general for our general health, but also specifically for addiction recovery. Then, since I know that most or all of you are either operators or staff or peers in recovery residences, I'll go over some tips and suggestions for bringing mindfulness into your residence. And then I hope that we have time to share a couple more just simple and effective mindfulness activities that you can take away with you. I don't know if we'll have a chance to actually try them together today, but you'll have access to those activities. I also have a slide of some resources and research to provide to you, and we'll end with the Q&A and discussion. So you heard the detailed introduction from Brianna about me. I'd like to just share a little bit more about my background and experience with mindfulness. As So I am a licensed independent clinical social worker and also a substance use disorder professional trainee. My application for the full SUDP license has been with the state about 2 months. If anybody knows how I can speed that up, let me know. But until then, I'm still a trainee. And I work today as an independent behavioral health consultant. My first experience with mindfulness came in 2014 after I returned to the US after 11 years of living in Southeast Asia. I came back to the US to do my master's degree in social work at the University of Washington, and found myself pretty overwhelmed and stressed, not only with starting graduate school, but also the US that I left in 2003 had changed so much. There was I felt almost like a stranger in my own country, in my own city. So I responded to a flyer I saw posted on campus for a mindfulness-based stress reduction 8-week program, and thought that I didn't know what mindfulness was, but I thought, well, stress reduction sounds like it could be good for me. So I enrolled in that, and that was my first taste of mindfulness. My experience, the benefits I gained from that program were enough to keep me interested and to seek out more opportunities to study and practice mindfulness while at the University of Washington. And in 2015, I started my first internship at Sound Mental Health on Capitol Hill in Seattle. I think today it's just called Sound Health. And I took over a weekly mindfulness group for outpatient clients with substance use disorders from a staff member, a clinician at Sound. And that was my first opportunity to share mindfulness and to see how folks in recovery responded to it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that group later on. In 2016, after I finished my master's degree, I went to work for Valley City's Behavioral Health in Seattle and spent 1 year working outpatient in South Seattle, in the Rainier Valley, Rainier Beach. And then I worked for 2 years at Recovery Place Seattle on Beacon Hill, the inpatient facility. And at both of those locations, I led weekly mindfulness groups with clients, and had to further stretch what I could offer because I continued for several years. So I got more experience with different activities. And today, what my personal engagement with mindfulness looks like is I practice mindfulness and yoga 3 times a week at my local YMCA. Actually, this year I've become much more engaged and interested in yoga. I've learned that the practice of yoga, which is about mind-body connection, is a really excellent way to prepare our minds and our bodies for mindfulness, getting ourselves stretched out, releasing some of whatever our body is holding on to, and prepare ourselves for really powerful mindfulness activities. Okay, so here is our introductory activity. Don't worry, you don't have to read this. I'm gonna read it. This is just sort of my guided script for this activity. So all you need to do, if you're willing, is to just relax and settle into your seat. Listen to what I guide you through here, and relax and enjoy. I need to figure out how to move this so I can see everything. There we go. Okay, so this, just so you know what you're in for, this will probably be about 5 or 6 minutes. And we're just making sure we're all grounded this morning and ready and open for this presentation. So take a few steady, deep breaths if that feels good to you. Generally, with mindfulness and yoga, we inhale through the nose to sort of cool and filter the air, and then exhale through the mouth to get all of the breath out of us. And when you're ready, if you're willing, simply and gently let your eyelids relax and your eyes close. Or if that's not comfortable for you, just let your gaze relax and soften. You don't need to focus on anything in particular. You can just sort of let your gaze go off into the middle distance. And take a moment to notice and acknowledge how you're feeling right now. You might feel tired. Notice that you're a little stressed and overworked. Maybe you're kind of annoyed that you were asked to join this webinar on Thursday morning. Or maybe you're feeling a little skeptical about what all this is about and if it's really going to be something useful. But however you're feeling, there's no judgment. We just recognize feelings come and go. There's no way to hold on to any feeling permanently, and all feelings will change like everything else. So just acknowledge how you're feeling and be prepared that it's likely going to change very soon. Now start to notice your physical body. Just see your physical body in your mind's eye. Notice how your body feels right now in the physical space that it's occupying. Be aware of how the air around you at this time, at this moment, is actually being warmed by the natural warmth of your body. As you pay conscious attention to your physical body, you might notice the sensation of it feeling a little heavier, of gravity settling in and getting you grounded into your chair or seat. So let's tune into the sensation of your body being supported right now by the chair that you're sitting in, of your feet resting on the floor. What does that feel like with all that support for your body, holding you up, keeping you upright? You might feel some appreciation for the sturdiness of your furniture, of how supportive it is, how well it holds your body, your back, and the backs of your legs and your knees. Consciously try to settle in or come into your body. Notice, do a little mental scan and see if you can detect any stiffness or soreness that might be present at this moment in your body. Might be in your shoulders. That's a common area where tension is held, or your neck. You might have some muscle strain from recent physical activity. Just notice how that sensation feels like. And if your mind has located anywhere in your body, just use your mind to try to consciously soften it a bit, kind of let it go. Try dropping some tension from your shoulders if there's any being held there. You can try gently rolling your shoulders back slowly and dropping them down a little lower than they had been. Now, let's bring our attention to our breath. Where can you be aware of your breath in this moment? We're all alive, so we must be breathing. It's required for life. But how do we know that we are breathing? Where can we be aware that breathing is taking place? Can you detect it in the coolness at your nostrils? Or maybe at the expansion of your chest and stomach at the inhalation? Just try following your breath for the next few inhalations and exhalations at your own pace. There's no need to change your breathing in any way. Just be aware of it. Just follow it. Our inhalations and exhalations just happen naturally in their own time. They don't require a conscious effort or force. And that's pretty interesting. And now that we've tuned into our breath and perhaps noticed how we can use it to help us relax a little bit, let's finally set our intention for this morning. Let's silently remind ourselves why we're here, where we are right now, why we're doing what we're doing, what we're about to participate in. Just silently think, perhaps, of answers to these following 3 questions. What am I hoping to gain from this presentation, to learn today from this presentation? Why am I doing the work I'm currently doing? Why am I involved with people in recovery and the work of recovery residences? And finally, how do I hope the new information and skills that I learned today might be useful for myself or for other people I have interaction with? What is my hope for how this might be useful? Now maybe just notice one last inhalation and exhalation, a nice breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back together with all of us, and be ready to continue on with our activities this morning. All right. So thank you for all of you who participated in that and gave it a try, or at least were patient while the rest of us went through it. I'd like to hear from a couple of you if you're willing. You can either type your response in the chat box or unmute yourself and answer any of these questions. I'm curious if that was anyone's very first taste of mindfulness, very first mindfulness experience. And also the next question is, do you notice anything different about how you feel now at this time compared to how you felt before we did that 5 or 6 minute activity? And was there anything surprising to you about how you feel or about that activity? Any questions you might have? Go ahead and feel free to just unmute yourself or write something in the chat box and Brianna can read it out.
Yeah, Elsa says more relaxed around my clarity, but it wasn't her first time. Serena says, I'm looking into meditation and I'm looking to further visualization techniques. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Trenton, sorry, says, personally, I've always found mindfulness to be helpful. I do feel calm and a little less tense.
Excellent. Thank you. So first of all, Elsa, your name is familiar to me. I know we've worked together in the past in Seattle around medication-assisted treatment. Thanks for joining us. For the second comment, the person who mentioned that she's interested in visualization practices, one of the 3 brief activities that I outline at the end includes visualization. So that's included a little bit. And for the person who said they feel a little less tense and calm, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. That's pretty powerful for just a 5-minute activity.
Yeah, Lisa says first timer, she feels calm and relaxed. Nicole says, my first time, I feel more relaxed. I had a headache and it's a bit better. Jesse
Beautiful.
says, not his first time. Mindfulness always feels like a clean slate of the mind. And then he says, anything surprising? Not this time.
Okay.
And Serena says, fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks for letting us know. I'm really honored that a couple of you are having your first experience with mindfulness with us all today, and with me. That's a great honor to me, and I'm really happy that you're with us. So the next section, we're going to talk about what mindfulness is and what it isn't, now that you've all had a little firsthand experience with it. And several of you mentioned that you feel a little relaxed, a little better. I'm so pleased that the person who had a bit of a headache, that's lessened. So let's talk about some of the myths around mindfulness, or some of the misperceptions we hear. And I'll briefly touch on why these are myths. So mindfulness is not a religious activity. It did originate from ancient Eastern and Buddhist philosophy well over 2,000 years ago, before Christ. But the Western version that we are familiar with today, the Western version that is commonly practiced in the US, is a completely secular practice. It is not religious. It doesn't conflict with any religions or the teachings of any religions. There's no worshiping, no praying, no temples, and no passing around of collection plates. Some people are confused about what is the difference between mindfulness and meditation. There is some overlap with the activity that we did today that could be considered a form of meditation. However, it was a guided meditation. You weren't asked to completely clear your mind of all thoughts, or to make your mind a blank slate. And with mindfulness, it does not involve any strict meditation routines. There's no maximum or minimum time frame for how long a mindfulness activity or mindfulness meditation should take. Even 30 seconds of mindfulness can be helpful and effective. And mindfulness, as I said, it's not about trying to clear your mind of all thoughts or suppress any emotions. Some people get the sense that mindfulness probably is useful, but I don't have time for that. It sounds like it's probably a complex practice that takes years to learn and master and perfect before you can really gain benefits of it. That is also just a myth. There's nothing complicated. Nothing needs to be complicated about mindfulness. We often use the breath with mindfulness as an anchor or as a tool. And that's because breath is something that is common to all of us who are living now, and it's completely free. We all have access to it at any time for no charge. So there's no complicated positions that we have to get our body into, no flowing white robes, no mantras we need to memorize and chant. It's commonly said with mindfulness, the practice is the perfection. There is no doing in mindfulness. There is no, I've accomplished it, I've become successful at mindfulness. There is simply practicing, trying, and that is where you get the benefit. The fourth one here, a cure for all stress. Mindfulness is not a cure for all stress. I guarantee you, those around me will tell you I get very stressed sometimes. Stress can creep up frequently for me. The difference is for people who practice mindfulness regularly, we sort of hone our ability to detect when we're starting to become stressful. And we also have learned and practiced skills that can help us then manage and reduce the stress before it becomes overwhelming, before we get completely carried away with the stress and it starts impacting our functioning. But unfortunately, I cannot promise you that if you practice mindfulness, you will never feel stress again. Stress is part of the human experience and part of all of our lives today. The good thing about mindfulness is that it's effective in helping us become more familiar and in tuned with the experience of stress and knowledgeable and proficient in how to manage or regulate it. And finally, some people have, especially in addiction recovery, have this perception that, well, mindfulness is kind of a way of trying to trick your brain into altering your consciousness without substances, or an attempt to enter into a trance or have almost like a psychedelic experience without the psychedelics. Actually, that is the opposite of what mindfulness is about. Mindfulness is about being fully aware and present and accepting of what's going on in the present moment, not being separated or numbed from it. I believe that when people experience the benefits of mindfulness and are able to practice it more frequently, you really reduce the desire to use substances, because you recognize, well, that separates me from the present, from living in the moment, and that doesn't feel good. It feels much better to be aware and present and living fully in the moment. So let's take a look at some definitions that authors and mindfulness experts have come up with. Mindfulness can be a tricky thing to kind of define. So I found and put together several different definitions. But first, I remember with the first mindfulness group I ran when I was still an intern at the University of Washington. One of the early mindfulness groups, I remember there was a young man, and it was his first time joining the group, his very first time joining us that day. And I think he was a new client. So he had, was still fresh in recovery, still very new. And I opened the group by asking, before we did the activity, I asked if anybody would like to take a stab at trying to define mindfulness or explain what is mindfulness in their own words. And I was thinking that one of the clients, one of the group members who had been in the mindfulness group for a while would be able to help this new guy without me needing to explain something directly to him. But I was really surprised because he was the first one to raise his hand. He was pretty confident and maybe a little cocky, but he wanted to take a stab. He felt that he knew what mindfulness is. And the way that he described it was, mindfulness is about being mindful. It's about paying attention to what you need to pay attention to, and not letting yourself get distracted. He said mindfulness is the opposite of mindlessness. And at first, I was prepared to be skeptical or have to try to correct his definition. But when he was finished, I thought, that's pretty good. That's just as valid a definition of mindfulness as anything I could come up with. So he taught me something that day. This first definition is from Gil Hansen and her book, Mindfulness, Live in the Moment. She defines mindfulness as, to be mindful simply means to be aware and to engage with what's happening right now. It's about being present in this moment. So you might make some connections with what we did in that first activity. Next is from a book that I used quite a lot when I was doing the mindfulness group at the inpatient facility, because it's divided into 52 sections, one for each week of the year with a different mindfulness activity. It's called The Gift of Recovery by Rebecca Williams. And her definition is: mindfulness, put simply, is a popular psychological approach to personal healing in a stressed out world. Mindfulness focuses on simply bringing your attention to the present moment, the here and now, rather than ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. And I will add that the reason that mindfulness is so powerful is because it does help us train our mind and get more skilled at staying in the present and not that about what's going to come next in the future, or not thinking about or ruminating on what's happened in the past, recognizing that we don't have any control over what's already happened in the past, and we have no control over about what's to come in the future. All we can do and all we can be present with and have some impact on is this moment and what we're doing right now. Also, we know that when we do ruminate on the past, when we get stuck or obsessive about getting into a negative loop and about the past, is that frequently leads to depression. It makes us feel sad because we have a negativity bias, and we're usually thinking about the things we regret in the past. And when we worry about the future, when we anticipate about what hasn't come yet, that can increase anxiety. So mindfulness is demonstrated to be effective in reducing both depression and anxiety by helping train our mind to stay focused on the present. This is from Jennifer Fernandez, and she has a book called Power Over Addiction. It's a harm reduction approach to changing your relationship to drugs, and there's a big section on mindfulness. Her definition is: mindfulness means sustained attention. Mindfulness practices strengthen the mind's ability to redirect focus. The point of mindfulness meditation is not to clear the mind, but rather to notice its activity and be able to redirect it when needed. So we can easily make connections with why this explanation explains why mindfulness can be helpful for people in recovery. If we are noticing and paying attention to where our thoughts are going and how we're feeling in the moment, we can catch it if it's taking us to a negative place that might lead us to relapse. This definition from Dr. Lloyd Sederer, and I'm going to talk more about his book in some future slides, but his definition is: through mindfulness, people can gain awareness of the present moment, at once also recognizing and accepting their feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. The practitioner may eventually come to appreciate that all feeling states are transient, transitory, and will pass. This is similar to, I think, of what is taught in some 12-step philosophies and groups. Also, some religious traditions recognize the value of recognizing that everything will pass, or time heals all wounds. There's no reason to. It's really unproductive and unnecessary to get bogged down in getting overwhelmed or carried away with anything that we're feeling right now, especially if it's negative, because we know nothing is static, everything will change, everything is dynamic. And when we come to recognize that and accept that, it's easier to let go and break free from negative feeling states. Finally, this is the last one, I promise. This definition is from Jon Kabat-Zinn. He is actually credited as being the person who responsible for bringing mindfulness to the West. Without him, we might not be meeting today, or having mindfulness be such a prominent topic in our society these days. He studied in India and started he founded the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. He started it by working with patients with terminal cancer in a palliative care unit, and he thought he knew some about mindfulness from his time in India, and he thought, you know, it might just be worth a shot to share some practices about mindfulness and see if it can help these cancer patients who all know that their cancer is not going to be cured, and it might help bring them some peace and reduce their anxiety. And that was the beginning of mindfulness in the West in the 1970s. So his definition is, as we can see here, and I actually can't see the very top of it. Okay, so his definition is, and it's commonly this is the definition that's commonly used in groups, because John Kabat-Zinn is sort of held in high esteem as the definitive knowledgeable person on mindfulness. But his definition is, mindfulness is the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, and in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So there's a lot packed into that sentence, but this diagram sort of does a good job of summarizing it. So mindfulness is, if we start at the bottom, the paying attention, the awareness that we bring to the present moment without judgment, in a non-judgmental attitude. And when we do that, when we pay attention and tune in to what's going on with ourselves and in our environment in the present moment, without being judgmental, and we do this on purpose, and because we recognize that it can bring us self-understanding and peace, that is what mindfulness is. So now to give us 3 minutes without me talking, I found a cute video that takes a stab at defining mindfulness and also presents some interesting ideas about mindfulness and about how mindfulness might come to be thought of in the near future. This is from the website called Happify, which is a lot about emotional and mindfulness skills. And the title of this video is "Mindfulness is a Superpower." So let's watch it and see if we agree. And I tested this with, oh, there we go.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. So I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed.
Whoops. I'm sorry. It seemed like the video was going really fast. I tried to check to see if I had changed the playback rate. Let me try to get us back to where we were. Thank you for bearing with me. Here we go.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. So I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, "Who's chasing you?" But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Okay. So I hope that you enjoyed that video, the cute animation. I thought it was really interesting how it talks at the end about how it's likely, and many people believe, that mindfulness is on track to becoming just one of the standard things that we in society are aware of that we should do if we want to have optimum health, especially now that we're becoming more aware of the importance of mental and emotional health as part of our overall health. I think, I don't know if that will happen. I don't know if it will happen in our lifetime, but I do think it would be beneficial if it did. I think it would be very useful if children in schools are taught some and introduced to some mindfulness skills and mindfulness practices. I think that could be very powerful. I most recently, when I worked with Valley Medical Center in South King County, I worked with a program for folks with chronic illness, mostly diabetes and hypertension. And, we drilled the common, it was really striking how the common information that we tried to encourage folks to understand and wrap their heads around, it was constantly repeated, and it was the same things. It was improve physical activity, try to reduce your intake of sugars and fats, and try to reduce your stress. It's really just a simple standard formula for improving your health, even with chronic illness, and improving your quality of life. And mindfulness can definitely be brought in there with the reducing stress. It's one of the very most effective ways of reducing stress. So I think that mindfulness is becoming more prominent, and more people are becoming aware of its benefits. And it's not just a fad. It's not going to go away. Finally, as I was working on putting the finishing touches on this presentation yesterday, I took a break. I went to my mindfulness class at the YMCA. I don't lead that class. I'm a student in that class. But something that the teacher said yesterday stuck with me. She said, the ability to cultivate peace in a chaotic world is powerful. And it made me think about the title of this video, which is Mindfulness is a Superpower. And at first that seems really like an overstatement, or really just kind of silly. But in a way, if we as individuals, if we can create and bring about and spread some peace, just starting in ourselves, by making ourselves feel a little bit more peaceful and relaxed, and then carrying that peace to others who we come into contact with during the day, that is very powerful. It really is. So let's dive into some of what makes mindfulness, some of the components, and some of the attitudes that are very useful to bring to mindfulness practice and mindfulness activities. So while I go into just a little detail about each of these 8 aspects of mindfulness, and you see at the top MDF, that's just my abbreviation for mindfulness when I take notes and do things. MDF, so that just stands for mindfulness. But as I talk about these 8 aspects, please just think about how these attitudes, these components can be useful for someone in recovery. So the first one is awareness, and that's just about being conscious and alert to the thoughts, experiences, and things that are happening around you or in you in the present moment, just being more aware. Acknowledgement means recognizing the existence of something, including thoughts and feelings. Just recognizing, not assigning judgment or determining if it's positive or negative or concerning or something that pleases you, just acknowledging that it's there. Then there's acceptance, and this is just acceptance of what is in the present moment. And also acceptance that's what's in the past is past, it's happened, it can't be changed. There's very limited utility in dwelling on it or obsessing about it. And also accepting that the future isn't here yet. We don't want to live in a space or in a mind frame that's not here and now, that's not real. Non-judgmental is a huge part of mindfulness, being non-judgmental. It requires that you don't give any positive or negative meaning to any of your thoughts and feelings. Just recognizing this is objectively the feeling that I'm experiencing right now. It also means being non-judgmental about other people's actions and things that are happening at the moment. So it goes along strongly with acknowledging. It's acknowledging without judgment. Letting go means not hanging on to or maintaining any attachment, certainly not any strong attachment to any thoughts, feelings, ideas, or situations. Again, it goes back to recognizing that everything is transitory, everything is just momentary, everything is dynamic and constantly changing. And everything will pass, the good and the bad, the happiness and the sadness, it will pass. If we can, in times of sadness or difficult emotions, if we can just hold on, soothe ourselves, maybe distract ourselves, we can rest assured that the feeling will pass and will change. Focus and engagement, I really think of that as brain fitness, as a workout for your brain. Focus and engagement is about strengthening your ability to manage your attention, to be in control, or to stand over and be above what you focus on, what you pay attention to, and be able to redirect your focus when necessary. So that you are in control of what you're focusing on and thinking about and paying attention to. And hopefully, or my suggestion is that what you pay attention to or what you focus on is only one thing at a time and something that's in the present moment. The next to last is beginner's mind. I really like this one because there's times that I get irritated or annoyed with things that I can't control. I can acknowledge them, and I can accept that I can't control them. I recognize that it's not going to last forever. It might seem like it's going to bother me forever, but when I think about beginner's mind, it can sort of help me let go or change my attitude about it. So beginner's mind really helps you see things in a new light, and also be open to new experience, to trying new things. Beginner's mind helps you become more aware of subtle changes that make what's happening right now a little different from what just happened in the past, or how you felt just a couple seconds ago. And beginner's mind also provides a sense of wonder, of novelty. It it helps the mundane seem interesting. And so this is really effective with relieving boredom. We can think, well, nothing's happening, nothing's going on, I don't have anything I'm interested in right now. But with beginner's mind, we can become really interested in the coffee cup. Just thinking about how it came to be in the form that it is now. What went into creating this coffee cup? And how did it come to being in my life now? And what does it contain right now? And how is it holding what it's holding? That's all beginner's mind. The most recent example I can give you of when I was really grateful and appreciative for being familiar with beginner's mind is with a terribly aggressive and barking dog that's in my neighborhood. I have a very cute and well-behaved 3-year-old husky that I like to walk around the neighborhood. He's really not satisfied if he gets less than 2 or 3 walks a day. But as soon as we go out of our neighborhood, we pass the backyard of a house that has a large, very loud, aggressive barking dog that leaps up the fence, like it's trying to jump over the fence. And at first I just thought, well, it's going to get used to us. It's going to calm down. But I really just think that it's a bored dog that needs to let out some energy by being aggressive with us. When I use beginner's mind, it helps me become less agitated or less annoyed with the dog. I just think, oh, that dog is going again. I wonder if it really believes it's ever going to be able to jump over the fence and get us. And I can sort of reduce the negativity around the experience and almost just hold sort of an attitude of, oh, hello, dog. There you go again. Aren't you silly? So finally, patience and trust, the last aspect here, is understanding that things take time and things happen on their own schedule. It's about giving up some of the imagined control that we tell ourselves we have over things in the world and in our own lives. And it's trusting and allowing things to develop in their own time, on their own schedule, and when they need to. Things that need to get done usually have a way of getting done. If they don't get done, it usually seems like they really it wasn't necessary, didn't need to get done. It's not that big of a deal. Things that need to happen do happen on their own schedule, and we can trust that. So the next section is about the benefits of mindfulness. So at this point, mindfulness has been, we've been aware of the benefits of mindfulness, and research has been conducted on mindfulness starting in the 1970s. At this point today, we can really say definitively that mindfulness is an evidence-based practice. There's the court is not out. The court of opinion is not out on mindfulness. The research is conclusive on the benefits of regular mindfulness practice. I found this quote in an article the other day. In a large-scale review of more than 400 research studies, mindfulness was consistently identified as an effective mental health practice for helping almost all people improve their physical and psychological well-being. So some of the benefits of mindfulness that have been demonstrated and proven through research are that mindfulness leads to decreased depression and improved mood. It increases or strengthens our emotional regulation skills, our ability to manage and be in control of our own emotions and not get carried away with them. Helping us take the time to be able to respond to our emotions rather than react, like the angry hedgehog or porcupine in that video we watched in the car accident. Mindfulness also is effective at reducing anxiety and stress. It improves our memory. It leads to other cognitive improvements like in our decision-making ability. It even improves and strengthens our relationships. Mindfulness is effective at increasing our empathy or our understanding that we are not the center of the universe, that other people also have things going on, and that no one is perfect. There are mindfulness programs specifically at improving romantic relationships or partnerships. And the way that mindfulness is effective for strengthening marriages and romantic relationships is that mindfulness helps one become more accepting of their partner's flaws or imperfections. It makes it easier to accept that nobody is perfect. Your partner it's unreasonable to expect that your partner is ever going to be perfect. And when we are able to accept and become comfortable with that, that increases our satisfaction in our relationship. And finally, two physiological things that mindfulness is beneficial for. This is really interesting. Mindfulness is mostly thought of as a mental activity, as something we use our mind to do, but it actually, that mind activity, the mental activity of mindfulness, actually does have an effect on our physiology by helping improve our sleep and also improving our digestion. There is the gut to mind connection, and when we calm down and regulate ourselves to be more calm and relaxed, that allows our digestion to be more effective and healthier. You'll notice there a little link to the article that goes into more detail about all of these benefits. And this is, I'm going to not stay on this long, but this is just a graphic representation of some of the benefits of mindfulness. The ones circled in magenta are the ones that I think are especially powerful for folks in recovery. At the top, we see that mindfulness restores childlike wonder. That's that beginner's mind attitude. And this is really powerful because I'm sure you're all familiar with, or you hear folks in early recovery commonly complaining about they're just bored. Nothing is interesting. Without drugs, life is so blah. Well, with mindfulness, you can achieve that sense of wonder, that sort of wow, how interesting, how fascinating sense that can be absent in early recovery with someone who's replaced that with substances for a long time. Then on the other side, decreases emotional reactivity. That's about the difference to mindfully responding to our emotions and situations that occur with us, the difference between mindfully responding to them or impulsively reacting to them, which is where we often find ourselves in trouble and is what's going on with a lot of times when folks relapse, is they are reacting to negative news, to negative feelings about that occur because of negative interactions with somebody, or difficult emotions. And they immediately react by going back to what has been effective at making them feel better in the past, which is drugs or alcohol. And the last one at the bottom increases empathy. That's about being more understanding and patient with other people, less judgmental with other people, and also aware that we're not the center of the universe. We solely are just a small part. And that brings us closer together with other people and makes it easier to develop fellowship and community, which are all protective factors against relapse. So now there's just a couple slides that get a little more technical, but this is the stuff that I think is really fascinating about mindfulness. So this is sort of what I get excited about. And I hope that it will have the same effect for you. I'm not an expert on neurobiology. It's something that consistently I feel like I need to remember the parts of the brain and the functions of the brain, and I still have difficulty with it. So this is going to be a very bird's eye view of this stuff. But I wanted to bring this in. Mindfulness helps rewire trauma brains, or the way that brains are after they've been exposed to trauma, after someone has lived through a traumatic experience. We know that trauma actually causes changes in the brain. And we also know that mindfulness helps undo some of those negative changes that trauma causes in the brain. So, and also the reason that I wanted to bring this in is because I don't anticipate that anyone would disagree that a huge percentage of folks with active substance use disorders today, and that also is a huge percentage of folks who are in recovery from substance use disorder today, are survivors of traumatic experiences. Trauma is well accepted to be and known to be a huge contributor to someone's vulnerability to developing a substance use disorder. Trauma is one of the primary factors that determines whether somebody can use substances recreationally without developing a powerful compulsive addiction and a lot of concomitant chaos in their life, or somebody who needs professional treatment and a lot of support in order to recover from a substance use disorder. Trauma is usually in there in determining whether somebody is able to manage substance use on their own or if they need professional clinical help. So, what do we know about the differences in the brains of people who have been exposed to trauma? We know that when we experience trauma, the brain shuts down all non-essential systems and activates the mammalian or lizard brain survival mode. This is the amygdala, the very center of the brain, the earliest part of the brain that developed, the part of the brain that all mammals have. We as human beings are fortunate to have much more developed and more sections of the brain. That's what makes us Homo sapiens, the thinking species. But at our core, the most basic and most primitive, oldest part of the human brain is the amygdala. And that's the part that is wired for survival. When the amygdala is activated by traumatic or alarming experiences, it basically shuts down the newer parts of the brain, the parts of the brain that are responsible for decision making, for responding thoughtfully to things, to thinking rationally. It shuts down those parts of the brain and just puts us in survival mode, because at the core, our brain wants to just protect our survival. So when we perceive a threat to our survival, the amygdala is activated, and the other parts of the brain, the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, are basically taken offline. And also the amygdala stimulates the release of stress hormones. Cortisol is one of the primary stress hormones. That's what puts us in fight or flight mode. We are ready to defend ourselves, to fight, to run, to run away, anything, whatever we need to do to survive. It puts us in attack or defense mode. And so when we operate with trauma, it can actually, the way that it rewires the brain is it strengthens the neural connections, and the amygdala can basically stay in a state of overreactivity. Even when the threat is gone, the amygdala is still overactive. It's still stimulating the release of those stress hormones that are corrosive for our health. So the way that mindfulness comes into this is that mindfulness practices, as it sounds like all of you by now, after our initial activity, have experienced for yourselves, mindfulness practices have a strong relaxation and actually a lasting stress reduction effect for most people. And this is extremely beneficial for rebalancing the brain's stress response, for putting the amygdala in a more reasonable state, letting the amygdala realize we don't constantly have to be alert and defensive for an attack. The danger, the threat has passed, and we can relax a little bit. This So this reduces the trauma brains, the way that the brain becomes after trauma, the overproduction of cortisol, which cortisol impedes our healthy functioning. It makes it more difficult to sleep. Cortisol reduces the effectiveness of our digestive system. And cortisol is actually the hormone that is responsible for making us feel on edge or tense with stress. So if we, and often the amygdala can get stuck, and the cortisol can be overproduced in our mind and through our bodies permanently or long term after trauma, or especially after folks who have had multiple traumas or complex trauma. And so this is how mindfulness can help reduce that, and that leads to why it can be effective for folks in recovery for substance use disorders. So I'm looking at the time. We have about 20 minutes overall, and I want to save a good amount of time for questions. So we'll go through this pretty fast. These are specifically some of the benefits that have been found, the benefits of mindfulness for recovery from addiction. I'm just going to go pretty quickly here. So the first one, and after all of these, you can see that in the smaller italicized text are the references for the specific research. But for folks in recovery, mindfulness has been found to be very helpful for reducing and managing stress, depression, and anxiety, the most common triggers for relapse. Mindfulness can help you retrain your brain to take a thoughtful approach to responding to difficult emotions and situations rather than reacting impulsively. And this is kind of repeated from a previous slide, but this is especially important when the use of substances has been one's impulsive or compulsive way of dealing with those difficult emotions in the past. Mindfulness can actually reduce cravings for alcohol and drugs by increasing natural, healthy feelings of well-being, contentment, joy, and wonder. And mindfulness has been definitively documented to lower incidence of relapse for people in early recovery. I'm going to skip to this middle one here. There's been research done with folks in early recovery. One group is assigned to a group that is offered to participate in daily mindfulness activities, maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day. They have options to participate in mindfulness activities. The other group do not have the mindfulness activities. They don't participate in mindfulness. Everything else about their experience in early recovery is the same. They eat the same food. They have the same sleep schedule. All of their other activities in the environment are identical. So that's how we can say that the difference in the effect is due to the mindfulness. And it's found that the people in recovery who do participate in brief daily mindfulness activities do have lower relapse rates. It is a significant reduction in rate of relapse. So going back to the first bullet point on this slide, this is related to the trauma brain information, but mindfulness helps to rewire or heal areas of the brain that also were negatively affected by heavy substance use. So even besides trauma, substance use itself changes our brain, including in the areas of the brain that are responsible for problem solving, impulse control, and decision-making, like considering options for healthy ways to cope with stress and difficult emotions. So the bottom line here is what I can say with full confidence, and I would stand behind this, is that for someone to have the very best chance at recovery, the best chance possible for a successful recovery, I would say mindfulness should be part of their recovery toolbox. It should be an available option for them that is introduced and supported, and that they have the opportunity to practice or become familiar with. Next, I would like to, this is the second part of what really sort of gets me excited about mindfulness. this book here, with a pretty provocative title, it's called The Addiction Solution. It sounds like, well, if the book has already been published, why haven't we solved addiction? So this book came out in 2018. I got it because the list price is $26 for the hardcover version, but I think I found it on Amazon for maybe half off. So I thought, well, I don't believe that the author actually figured out the solution to addiction, but maybe I'll have a chance to read it someday. I finally got around to reading it a couple months ago, and was really interested with the author's argument, or what he proposes as a solution for addiction. So first of all, the author of this book, The Addiction Solution, is a medical doctor named Lloyd Sederer. Currently he's the chief medical officer for the New York State Office of Mental Health, which includes the substance use division. And he's also an adjunct professor at the Columbia University School of Public Health in New York. His argument is what his thesis basically in this book is that we know from history, it's without doubt, it's historical fact that without exception, every human society throughout history has used psychoactive substances of some form for varied purposes, including often for simply what we can say is the pleasure or the positive experience of being high, of the pleasure of taking leave from the psychic pains that are part of being human, the relief that psychoactive substances can bring from the pains of just what the human condition entails. So acknowledging that there's never been a society throughout human history that has been free of substance use, we need to really redirect our focus from eliminating substance use, like the war on drugs, because we don't have any examples throughout human history of that being achieved. So we need to really direct our attention and our focus at looking at ways to reduce harmful substance use, and to manage the harms of substance use. And so Dr. Sederer's argument is that in order to do this, we need to find and promote alternate, effective ways for people to be able to change how they feel and think. So effective ways for people to be able to achieve different states of consciousness that are safer, healthier, and more socially acceptable than substance use. So give people more effective, better, healthier, more socially acceptable options for changing the way they feel and managing the way they feel. And that's worth a shot at reducing substance use. So he categorizes, the rest of the book goes into discussing 4 different categories of alternatives to compulsive and harmful substance use that could be viable, that are actually effective ways for us to change and manage the way that we feel. The first group is exercise and sports. That's been around, that's very non-controversial. Exercise and sports, strenuous physical activity stimulates the release of feel-good chemicals like dopamine and endorphins. Exercise and sports can be difficult for people to motivate themselves for. That's the drawback. The next category is meaningful engagement of talents and contribution to community. So when people are given the support and the encouragement to develop their individual unique talents and to contribute to community, to share their talents with the community, and to be a member to feel like they are a member of a community, that is a viable alternative to substance use. In this category, we would put religious communities, church groups, also fellowship groups and 12-step groups would go into this. We know that those are viable alternatives to substance use that help people feel better without substances. The next category is quite controversial. It's about the pharmaceutical microdosing of certain psychedelic substances. There is a lot of promising research being done about this now, I'm sure that many of you or all of you have come across items in the news about ketamine treatment for depression, or there's even online websites that promise if you register with them and become a member, they can get you prescribed, magic mushrooms and things like that. We do know that there's a significant percentage of folks out there with severe chronic depression or anxiety that the currently available antidepressants and medications are not effective for. And many of those people who basically have no positive treatment response with the available prescriptions or medications for depression and anxiety, if they have the opportunity to participate in a study using psychedelics, a lot of them report, this is the first time I feel my depression lifting. This is the first thing that's given me some hope that I don't have to be depressed all my life. So there is reason to keep an open mind about the use of some psychedelics. This is about pharmaceutical, controlled and regulated use of psychedelics to help people manage their feeling states. And finally, and most pertinently for us today, yoga, meditation, and mindfulness is the fourth category. And I'm just going to read the second paragraph here for time. But Dr. Sederer explains, meditation, yoga, and mindfulness practices can enable us to regulate bodily functions previously thought inaccessible to our conscious efforts, and also have a profound effect on the mind's executive functions and our capacity for awareness of ourselves and others. They are means by which our lives can be enriched, pain lessened, and pleasure increased. And I would carry it forward by saying people that already feel like their lives are rich, that they're not living in pain, and that they do experience pleasure in their lives, they really have a reduced a need or motivation for using substances to achieve those states. And that's what mindfulness can help people feel. So here's the gold or the takeaways for folks that work with recovery residences here. Some tips and suggestions for bringing mindfulness into your residence. I encourage you to share information about what you learned from this presentation and what you might look into with just a simple Google search of mindfulness. Share that with your staff, with your colleagues, and also with residents. Print out some mindfulness posters or guided meditation scripts, instructions for mindfulness activities, and make them available. Have them lying around or in an area in your house where handouts are available. Also, encourage residents to seek out and participate in mindfulness or meditation or yoga groups that are available in the community. A lot of behavioral health agencies have weekly mindfulness groups, and this gets somebody not only engaged in mindfulness, but also in another sort of community that can be strengthening for them in their recovery. I think it's a great idea to organize regular weekly or even daily brief mindfulness group activities in-house at your recovery residence, and to seek ways to make mindfulness activities just part of the general culture at your recovery residence. It doesn't have to be a new or weird or woo-woo thing. It's just a recognized standard thing that helps people feel relaxed and calm and have a better day. And it's something that we practice here at our residence. If you are an operator or if you are a director or manager of a house, try to ensure your buy-in and participation from your staff. Them taking a lead or role modeling mindfulness can be very powerful for your residents. Also, try to seek or identify a mindfulness advocate, either a resident or a staff member at your residence, somebody who, for new residents who don't have much experience or exposure to mindfulness, you can say, well, talk to Peter. He can explain a lot about mindfulness. Also, there are a lot of free apps you can download on your phone or tablet with free mindfulness activities, guided meditations. And for folks that aren't comfortable with doing mindfulness in a group, these can be great. They can just, in their own personal space or even on the bus, put in headphones and listen to a guided mindfulness activity. Lastly, the last two are sort of warnings or just, I think it's important to mention these, that mindfulness activities should be completely optional for residents. No one should be forced to participate. They should feel welcoming and also rewarding for everybody. It's not a punishment or an obligation that you must participate in mindfulness. And the reason for that, one of the primary reasons, is that we need to be trauma sensitive. We know that for some people, fortunately, it's a small percentage, but for some people with PTSD or unresolved trauma, mindfulness can be uncomfortable. For folks who are disconnected or uncomfortable with their physical bodies, to ask them to close their eyes and tune into sensations occurring in their body, that can feel threatening for someone. It can actually cause re-traumatization, which could lead to relapse. So we do not ever want to push someone to do mindfulness if it doesn't feel good. I always start groups by, especially this, I was cognizant of the need to do this at inpatient, was to let people know if this doesn't feel good, if anything feels unpleasant to you, simply open your eyes. Take yourself out of it. You can feel free to leave the room or just sit quietly until the rest of us finish, but don't do anything that's unpleasant. Okay, I have 3 slides here that are simple, brief, and very effective mindfulness activities that you can do either by yourself or in a group. We don't have time to go into details with these, but Brianna is going to send out a PDF file of all of these slides, so you're all going to get it. And the terrific trio is the one that has some visualization component to it, the third one. This is the slide with some recommended resources and also websites and apps if you're interested in looking into more about mindfulness. So now, fortunately, we have a couple minutes. Let's hear from you. What questions do you still have about mindfulness, especially its usefulness for people in recovery? Also, if you or any of the staff at your recovery residence have ever organized or conducted mindfulness activities, how did it go? Please share, let us all know. And you can type things into the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself. Just let us know if mindfulness might already be part of your recovery residence, and any questions or takeaways you might have. Don't be shy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see a couple people had to leave early. No problem. If you're still typing in the chat box, please continue, because we're running so short on time and I want to give Brianna a minute to wrap up anything. I'm going to move on. Yeah. Oh, I see something in the chat box came in.
Yeah, she said, Leanna says, I try to share mindfulness techniques with inmates when I am talking with them about SUD services.
Great, wonderful. I want to commend you for mentioning mindfulness and making more people aware of it, especially with inmates.
Yeah, Peggy says, mindfulness will help me to recognize elevated feelings before I hit the brick wall.
Yep.
And then Emily is curious if you could put up the slide with the apps.
Yes, here's the slide with the apps. As I said, Brianna will email this out to everyone who registered, everyone who put in their email. And so you'll have, you can take a screenshot of this slide now, but you'll get it also. All of these apps here, I only checked with the iPhone App Store, so I can't confirm that these are also all available on other devices. But I do know that all of these apps are either completely free, like UCLA Mindful is completely free. A lot of the other ones have paid memberships, but you can at least get access to some of the activities, some of the meditations for free, or you can sign up for a free trial period. All right, I'm gonna move on because a couple things I just want to mention quickly is that you're free to email me, my email's here, with any additional questions, requests, or suggestions you might have about mindfulness. Feel free to reach out to me. Look in your email for the PDF of all these slides that Brianna is going to send out. Also, a video recording of this presentation is going to be available on the Walker website and on YouTube. And also, since Walker has now kindly already paid me to put this presentation together, I want to offer to all of you that I'm available to run through this webinar again with you live with your staff or your residents, maybe as part of a team training or something. I can do it with or without guided group mindfulness activities, and I can do that free of charge or by donation if this would be helpful for you. This is my sort of carrying forward. I've gotten a lot of benefits from mindfulness. I'm excited and energized by being able to share it with others and carry it forward. So watch the video if you'd like, or if you'd like to invite me to do this specifically for your group or your residents, reach out to me. Mm-hmm. And finally, 1 minute, I have 2 more scheduled webinars with Walker next month and in June. So in May 19th is going to be about motivational interviewing, skills for effective communication in recovery residences. And in June, on Friday, June 24th, is going to be, it's connected to motivational interviewing, but it's on stages of change, understanding primary tasks and interventions for recovery residents. I want to mention that I believe when I started doing these presentations for Walker, mostly it was only operators who were registering and coming, but actually all staff, peers of recovery residences, anyone that you work with are all welcome and encouraged to register and participate in these webinars. I love having big groups. So that's all from me. I'm going to turn it over to Brianna. Thank you all very much for your attendance and participation today.
Yeah, I see a question on how to register for those events. So as we announce them usually towards the end of the month, and people who are registered to get our emails, they'll get an email with the links to register. But also, if you don't see that, or you could just check in on our website under events towards the beginning of the month, and you'll see it on there. So that's how you register for it. So, and I don't have anything else. I just want to thank you so much, Garrett. What a wonderful offer that was. And yeah, I encourage anyone here to reach out to Garrett with questions, and I'll even link his contact info on the slides that I'll be sending out with the email. So thanks everyone for coming. Really appreciate you. Oh, one last thing. I did create a little survey just with 6 questions. When I end the meeting, it should pop up in your browser. So if you have time to fill that out, that'd be great. It just helps us know, yeah, what we can do better and what you enjoyed. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.